Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is our kickoff to our 2022 spotlight sessions for eVerge Live presented by eVerge. We're really excited to talk about performance and compensation cycles today. We know that business has changed quite a bit this year and last year too, obviously, because of COVID. And so we think we've got some tips and tricks that you might be interested in today. Actually, I know you will be. We've got a great presentation for you. So let's go ahead and talk about our agenda real quick, and then we'll get started. So like I said, we're gonna just do some quick introductions of the team and who's presenting today. And then we're gonna jump right into performance in the era of COVID. We know, like I said, business has changed so much with people working remotely and people working in offices and then a hybrid of both. So we're going to talk about that a little bit and how performance cycles have changed just a little bit because of that. And the same thing with compensation cycles. And then we're going to talk about some of the things that we think are very important that you should really be looking out for with the updates that are coming through from Oracle. And then we'll just do a quick closeout, guys. So again, thank you so much for joining us today. And so our presenters today are Mohammed El-Shenawi, Manoj Chidi, Beth Blom, and Scott Muggleston. And my name is Crystal Fernandez. I'm the Senior Director for eVerge Live. And like I said, it's a pleasure to have you here. And we're going to go ahead and get Mo started.
Hi everyone, my name is Mohammed El-Shenawi. I am the Senior Solution Architect at eVerge Live for the HCM application. It's been I think it's almost 2 years with eVerge. Before that, I was working as an HCM specialist at Oracle for more than 10 years in the HCM space, and then I think that's it. The mostly I handle the Oracle recruiting, Oracle talent management, help desk, Oracle learning, and HCM security. And I think that's a bit about myself, so we can get started. Today's presentation will explain will explain how performance reviews are one of the most important tools for managing a worker's performance on the job. Um, the employees are one of the most important assets, and each year new goals should be assigned which support the common objective of each organization. The employee needs to be kept motivated by evaluating their performance throughout the year. So basically, the performance evaluation process is a tool to assess the employee performance on goals, which we call them SMART goals. They should be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-based. We also I'm sorry, excuse me. So we also assess them on competencies by providing ratings and comments. The process enable an ongoing conversation between employees and manager and coworkers to drive performance and talent development. Um, in today's world, work as we know it is changing so quickly, especially with COVID. The workforce is becoming more and more remote. The application has been improved to support the performance evaluation on the go. So, for example, right now the application has improved news feed user interface with more quick actions and fewer steps to take. Now the managers and employees can perform the performance evaluation on their smartphones and tablets. The employees can also update their goals and track their competencies also on the smart devices. Um, the organization right now have different set of goals in addition to their own goals. Example, communication skills, presentation skills. There's new learning items assigned to the employees on health and safety in the workplace. For example, the managers can keep track of their one-on-one conversation with the employees also on the smartphones using the check-in documents feature. And that's a bit on that business process. Now we're gonna dive a bit in performance configuration. Then we're gonna jump on the system to show you some user interface and some tasks necessary to perform that configuration. So the main two templates used for the performance configuration are two. One is standard and one is anytime. We call it standard because this will be your choice for a typical performance document that you can perform annually or semi-annually. And the anytime template will be your choice for performance document or performance evaluation for a specific project, for example, or a specific time period. And these performance templates have a set of variables that you can define in the system. So you can basically configure anything that you need according to your requirement, business requirement. So Crystal, can you please let me share my screen so I can,
Yep, it's all yours.
yeah, okay. Let me know when you can see my screen. I think you can now.
Yeah.
All right, so as an HR specialist, you can log into the system and you go to the My Client Groups tab here. If you want to configure the performance, you click on Performance here. That's where you're gonna see a list of your admin tasks related to performance documents. I'm not gonna jump on each one of them right now, but for example, the performance documents here, you can search any performance document for any employee in the system according to your data security access. So in our case here, the first thing that you need to configure is the performance, the review period, which is here. That's where you can define the time frame of the performance document. So each year you configure one of these um, review periods. So for the 2021 cycle, you just come here and you define start date and end date. Afterwards, you need to define a process flow which is going to be used inside the template. So for an annual evaluation, you define something called annual evaluation, where you can put a name, description, you put a date, start and end, and then you define what task you want to include inside that process. Like, for example, do you want the employees or the managers to set their own goals or create their own goals when they start the performance evaluation? And then do you want to include a worker self-evaluation, for example, manager self-evaluation, etc. So this is the main screen. You can check it and define what configuration you need based on your business requirement. And then we go to the main task for performance templates. We have to click search here to populate everything that's defined in the system. So for the annual evaluation, you're gonna see here it starts with a name, template type is standard, and then the from and to date is based on the review period that you defined, and then you define the roles to access um, the performance document. In this case, it's manager and worker. In the process, that's where it picked up. You can define this annual evaluation process that we just opened up, and you would see here that, for example, this task is worker self-evaluation, manager self-evaluation, but you don't see anything here related to goals or competencies that are necessary to evaluate the employees against. So in this case, this template is configured so it can automatically pull the current employee goals and competencies from the system. And this is defined. Sorry, you have to highlight the performance goals, for example, and then you scroll down. That's where you're gonna see here a checkbox it's selected for populate with worker performance goals. So that means that whenever you start the evaluation, the employee will see his current goals populated inside the document to put his rating for. The document periods here is where you define eligibility profiles necessary to define the scope of the audience who's gonna be assigned the performance document. You can put here like employee type, assignment type, and etc. And or you can define your own criteria to select a group of people or group of employees. And here, instead of if you want to use this template each year, just come here, insert a row, you put the name, for example, 2022 or 2021, and you define here the beginning and end of the evaluation year, and then save and close. And once you're ready to assign it to the employees, you have to select available to use. In this case, it's configured, but it's not yet available because we're still at the beginning of the year. So, so this is, I would say, a high overview of like the performance template configuration necessary. And let's jump now to see like how the employee can actually go through the evaluation. So I'm logged in right now as an employee. In this case, as an employee, you have to go to the Me tab, and then you go to the section called Career and Performance. This is the main section that contains everything related to the talent management and career and performance for the employee. So you can see skills and qualifications, goals, performance, career development, and feedback. So once you're here, you're going to see that this message, which states which task you need to jump on and start working on it. So which is the worker self-evaluation. So we're just going to click on it. All right. So the first thing that you need to do is you can check the details here, and then you can see this is the evaluation topics. So the employee, what he needs to do is click on each topic, try to evaluate it, and then put an overall summary. So let's start by the goals. Let me show you. Okay, so here you can type any comment that you know see fit related to your progress over the year, and you can give yourself a rating, and each rating is it's mapped uh, to a, a different value. So of course, I mean here the employee select the appropriate rating for each one. It has to be each one, and you save and close. So you see here you're gonna see like 5 out of 5 rated, but there is no comment. And then for the competencies, you're gonna see that in order for the employee to perform, I would say, as the organization sees it, he needs at least 3 stars here. So this is the target that he needs to reach. So the employee can put his own target here, and he can put any comments. Or for example, he can put outstanding and then uh, you know, list here all his achievement throughout the year. And then you can save and close. Okay, so here it didn't pick up on the last one. So that's how you know that this task has been completed. And then for the overall summary, you have to click edit, and then you rate yourself from an overall perspective. And then you put any comments that you need. You can also add attachments if necessary. Then you click on the submit button here. So, so once you submitted it, basically the manager will receive a notification, and then he's gonna go in. He's gonna provide their own performance, ratings on the performance goals and competencies assigned to the employee. And once he does that, he's gonna schedule a meeting with the employee so they can discuss all the feedback, and the employee has to acknowledge it. And after that, they can both the employee and the manager can put their overall comments and their final feedback. and that's conclude the performance evaluation. Afterwards, the HR person can host a talent review meeting. And the talent review meeting basically is like whenever you're have multiple locations for the same company, for example, in the North America region. So they meet together, and when they meet, they start by pulling the current rating of each employee in something called 9x box. So you would see, for example, Simone, Melinda, like whenever you start this meeting, and for this meeting is, for example, for five managers, each manager has employees. So it depends on their performance evaluation ratings and comments. They're gonna be fall in one of these boxes, because you can see this box is potential talent, this is rising talent, top talent. It depends on how you configure this box. So you will see them in each box. And now, like, the manager discuss like the final thoughts on like who's gonna be promoted, who's gonna get a raise, if they think that they did above and beyond at the last minute. So what they need to do is just take any employee, and they, for example, put them in top talent here. So you'll see that they went from exceeding expectation to outstanding. And the benefit of having this talent review meeting is, if you right click on it, you can see, you can print their profiles, you can move them in any other box, you can give them tasks, notes, you can add them to a succession plan and talent pool, which I'm going to explain in a second. And you can assign them development goal or performance goal. You can also compare them against each other by the compare functionality here. um, for the talent pool, basically it's a place where you can combine different employees, which you think that they are like the next in line for future position in the company. If you need, for example, to replace a position in 5 years, or if you think that there is like a role that's you need to prepare other employees to take over at any minute, um, just in case someone left the company, for example. So that's where you define a talent pool, which is basically we consider it as a bucket full of like potential candidates for a new role or position. And from that talent pool, whenever you create a succession plan, for example, for a role or for a person, the VP of the company, for example. So you think that if the VP left at any second, you have to have like talented employees that they can replace that person in case um, he left the company. So you can add like potential candidates directly from the talent pool to succession plan when the HR person created. And yeah, so that was high level overview of the what performance management can do at this point of time. Of course, we can, if you need to learn more about this, we can have like another demo sessions, and we can jump into your environment and show you specific configuration related to your environment. So
Okay, Mo, thank you so much. That was great.
thank you.
All right, so now we're going to move on to compensation, and Manoj Chidi is going to be presenting for us. So Manoj, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Crystal. Thank you, Mo, for giving an overview on the performance management. Well, my name is Manoj Chitty, and I am with eVerge, working as a senior solutions architect, working in the space of Oracle HCM Cloud. So today I'm going to go over the compensation cycle overview. Right. So one thing I want to add is like this is my understanding is that like compensation cycle is an extension towards performance management, where compensation cycle provides a tangible benefits for the outcome of performance, right? So with that being said, speaking of compensation, organization takes effort to appreciate their employees in one way, shape, or form. It could be in the form of bonus, merit increase, stock options. It could be one or all of them. Organizations also recognize their employees on ad hoc basis by giving them spot bonuses, award recognitions, sometimes retention bonuses and new hire bonuses, and so on, as required by the organization, right? Speaking of workforce compensation, helps the organization in tracking and maintaining these activities, which will help both the employee and the organization in the long run. Compensation cycle can be divided into 3 sections, which is the before, during, and after. Before is the pre-compensation cycle activities, during is the during compensation cycle, and after is the post-compensation cycle activities. Before I get in there, right, administrators, compensation administrators really play a very important role throughout the compensation cycle. They take a lot of effort preparing for the compensation cycle. They have a laundry list of items to take care of. It could be a bare minimum like learnings from the previous compensation cycle, or it could be any new features which are released, which we have it during our quarterly releases, right, which needs to be incorporated in the current compensation cycle. Maybe it be a standard functionality or any configuration change need to be done for the current compensation cycle. So let's discuss few of the activities for the pre-compensation cycle. Right, one of the first few configuration I can think of is duplicating the plan cycle. If it's a new implementation, then you have to create a new plan cycle. But if it's already an existing one, you can duplicate the existing one. You can duplicate the existing plan cycle and populate the dates. And this configuration holds very important dates, which are used throughout the compensation cycle. So make sure all the dates are in place. Another configuration is the eligibility profile. Make sure that the eligibility profiles are updated, because eligibility profile plays a very important role in determining the eligible employee groups who are eligible for the compensation plan and its components. It also determines the employee populations on the manager worksheet. So make sure the eligibility profiles are in place. The other configuration is alerts. Make sure the existing alerts are maintained, or if at all any changes needs to be made, make it. If at all any new alerts needs to be defined, go ahead and define it as required for the compensation cycle, because alerts play a very important role on the worksheet by providing information of each and every employee on the worksheet. This information is used by the managers to make the educated decisions while they are working on the worksheets on the employees. Another piece of configuration is like dynamic columns, configuring the dynamic columns, enabling the user-defined fields. Make sure these columns are configured to cater to the business needs so that the required functionality is achieved during the compensation cycle. One of the pieces of configuration is currency conversions. If your organization is placed globally, then make sure the appropriate conversion rates are populated so that it can be used during the compensation cycle. Right, and another thing is the compensation change statements. Make sure the appropriate verbiage and verbiage is populated on the templates so that once a compensation cycle is completed, you can generate the statements for the employees, give it to them, or make it available for them online. These are some of the few prerequisites that I gave, but one of the important tasks is starting the compensation cycle process. But before, whenever you are about to start the compensation cycle process, make sure that you validate the compensation plan settings. Once you are sure that yes, everything looks good, then you can go ahead and start the compensation cycle. Now, this will take us to the second phase of our compensation cycle, which is during the compensation cycle. So after the process is complete, again, the administrators will jump in to make sure that whatever was configured is looking good. So they perform a lot of validations. One of the first thing is that they validate the worksheet itself, making sure all the required columns which they have configured are in place. Okay, making sure the user-defined columns are functioning accordingly, the dynamic columns are functioning accordingly based on the configurations which are done. Like along with that, the administrators also make sure that the eligible employee population is there on the worksheet based on the manager that they proxied in. So after all this validation, and also another thing is that like whatever budgetary configurations we have done are seen accurately on the manager's worksheet. After all these validations, admins now release the worksheets to their managers for the next steps. In parallel, administrators, as a routine, make sure that they run some seeded reports like employee eligibility report or manager status report or manager missing report, right? All the alert summary reports, all this reports give some information to the administrators. Using that, they will determine if there's any action needs to be taken or not. So while this is going on, managers are working on their respective worksheets, populating the data on their worksheets. Once completed, they'll be submitting their worksheets for approval. And once all the worksheets are approved and done, we are ready for the third phase of the compensation cycle, which is the post-compensation cycle. One of the first steps or the important steps is that in this particular third section of it, that the post-compensation cycle is, we have to transfer the compensation data into HR. Once the process completes, again, the administrators run some seeded reports, make sure or validate the data to make sure that the data got posted from compensation to HR. So that being said, right, going over the overview of the compensation cycle, we can move forward with learning about some new features for compensation. So Crystal, can I go ahead and share my screen?
Absolutely.
Yep. Thank you. Give me 1 second. Okay. So you're able to see my screen here? Yeah. I did not list all the features which are possible, but in the interest of time, or whichever I felt it were good, which are about to be released as new features, I just listed them here. The first one is disabling the withdraw button. So the functionality here is that if at all the organization decides that the manager, once the manager submits the worksheet, he shouldn't be allowed to withdraw the worksheet. So that being said, we can disable the withdraw button from the manager's worksheet. And this can be configured at 2 different places, which is configure approval and notification section, where you can see the withdraw mode, right? Or at the active plan, we can see the withdraw mode. So moving on to the next functionality is added additional column. So there's a functionality called administer worker for compensation admins, where they get to see a query an employee, whatever is happening on the worksheet for the employee, they can see it over here. If there's any maintenance needs to be done, maintenance activity needs to be done. So with this particular feature, they have added a lot of columns on the administer worker functionality. One of the advantages I see here is that manage or comp admins does not have to go back and forth between the administer worker functionality and manage a worksheet. So because they can see a lot of information with this, administer worker page. Moving on to the next one is the post compensation amounts to simple components. This is again a new feature. Basically, the functionality here is that if at all a salary basis has simple components associated with it, and if at all we wanted the values on the simple components to be populated automatically, then this particular configuration is required. As you see here, it starts at the salary and element mapping level, where you have to select, yes, manager does not enter simple components, right? Once you pick this value, it will give the leverage to proceed with additional configuration steps, wherein under this simple components, you get to pick the salary basis. Based on the salary basis picked, right, you can see the simple components being populated here, like the basic, the city allowance, the travel allowance, and a particular individual rates can be applied here. It can be through balances, it can be through percentages or amounts. There's one more, but there are 4 ways that you can apply the rates to these particular simple components. And this functionality also gives a feature wherein as soon as you configure it, you can test it then and there itself on the same screen. So here, if you see in this print screen, there's a change amount which was gained as $1,500. And once you click on the test, a window shows up with respect to whatever percentages we gave in the configuration, right? The values will be calculated accordingly. And whatever is the balance which is left off of this 1,500, that will get applied to the balance value here. So definitely it's a very good feature. It avoids manual intervention. Moving on to the next one is view additional eligibility information. This is the worker eligibility reports, which normally administrators runs to make sure that who are eligible employees, they got eligible, and who are ineligible, they can validate it. The new feature that is given over here is we will get the eligible employee, but along with we'll get the ineligible employee information. Along with the ineligible employee, we get to see what is the eligibility profile which made this employee ineligible. So this again gives administrators, he does not have to go back and forth between the eligibility definition screen and try to figure out which eligibility profile made this employee ineligible. So like the information is right there, so that they can dig into that eligibility profile if at all something needs to be done, or update the eligibility profile so that this person becomes eligible. So whatever action needs to be done. So this is a very good feature. Coming to another one, which is the assignment segments. This functionality can be better explained with an example though. Assuming if an employee undergoes multiple assignment changes, which leads to the change in the salaries, right? And eventually if the person gets selected or gets picked up for the compensation cycle, we wanted the eligible earnings from that year to be seen on the manager's worksheet, so that when the manager applies the merit or the bonus percentages, they should be applied to the eligible earnings of the employee. So if a person was making like $80,000 before and now he's making $100,000, so when the percentages are applied, okay, for the duration of the time, it should be applied for 80,000, and for the duration of the time, it should be applied for 100,000, so that the calculations are done accurately, and at the same time, managers are able to view this information. So that is this functionality is like a lot of businesses are looking for this functionality, as finally it is coming up soon. So that being said, I'm done with my part of the presentation. I can give it back to Crystal.
All right.
Thank you.
Why don't you stop sharing your screen and I'll go ahead and share again.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And what I'm going to do, folks, is I'm going to go back to Mo's screen, and we're going to talk really quickly about new features, because he did not get to cover that part, and I really want to make sure that we jump back into that space and do that. So give me just a moment while I jump back to his screen so we can cover that really quickly. And then we're going to talk about new features, the other ones that we wanted to talk about earlier. So, all right, Mo, why don't you go ahead?
All right. Hello again. So part of the new features for the HSAM application from a talent management, the first one is determine maximum goals in a goal plan. So now you can restrict the number of goals that you can create within a goal plan. So the employee wouldn't exceed that number of goals. And then the second feature is you can now, as an HR admin, to select multiple performance document at the same time and transfer them all to a new manager, for example. In the past, you can only transfer one by one. The third feature is right now you can add a succession plan candidates directly from a talent pool. So I mean, in the past you have like to select it in different ways, but now you can just fit it from the talent pool directly. And one of the important features that have been going on, like been requested for a long time, is right now you can add attachment on each individual items in the skills and qualification page, like honors, degrees, license and certifications, content section. So you can add attachment for each one of them separately. And the next one is you can now track the progress of learning item associated with the development goal. So when you expand that section, you can see the status for each learning assigned to that, and you can see your progress on that learning item from the development goal. And the last one is more, I would say, general. It's related to the approval rules. So in the past we had like the hassle once you configure each approval rule that you have to create new transaction in order for you to be able to test it, right? So the application has been improved at this point to have a rule simulation. It's gonna be on the configuration page for the approval rules. You're just gonna click on that, and it works as of now with like a certain tasks, like add pending worker, add assignment, change assignment, resignation, promote, transfer, termination, transfer. So you're just gonna click on that button. It's gonna test, the rule on your behalf. You're gonna receive like the approval flow without you having to jump in and actually, create, transaction data in the system. And yeah, that's it, Crystal.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so let me go over to the next one. Right, Manoj, did you talk through yours?
Yes, I did, Crystal.
Perfect. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and jump into the 22A highlights that we're feel like are important. We are going to have Beth Blom speak today and Scott Muggleston. And Scott, you want to turn your camera on too, so everyone can see your face. And so I'm going to turn this over to Beth and let her get started, and Scott's going to jump in right after Beth. Okay. So Beth, take it away.
Thank you. Hello, I am Beth Blum with the eVerge Live team. I do primarily focus on the benefits module. And today I'm here to talk about, there's a number of updates for benefits in 22A. I'm going to highlight 3 of them that I believe will touch on the benefit administration on a more day-to-day basis. However, you can always go and check those out at any time with the other updates. First one I'm going to discuss is the extend enrollment window for new hires enhancement. Benefits administrators can now extend an enrollment window for life events such as the new hire or open enrollment on an individual basis, or any life event that employees can make changes through benefit employee self-service. This will allow an employee more time to make their enrollment choices or changes. And this is an enhancement to an already released functionality, but it now eliminates the need to back out and reprocess life events. Next one I'll discuss is the new check for enrollment when dependent contact start date is changed. A common issue that happens for benefit administrators is when an employee creates a new dependent or contact and the start date they've used for that relationship start date is not correct. So this can cause downstream issues when the employee is trying to complete their enrollment choices or changes. This requires the administrator to manually correct start date for the dependent record. However, if there is enrollment data for that new dependent or contact, it can be corrupted if the start date is changed without updating the enrollment data. So this new functionality is checking for enrollment data on the dependent or contact record when the start date correction is attempted, and it'll prompt the administrator to go back and void any open life events first before the correction is made. So this will prevent future corruption of the enrollment data from that correction. And the next is also another enhancement. This is the track changes in enrollment data. In the 21D update, Oracle released functionality that allows administrators to track and report on changes or operations performed on certain business objects, such as evaluated life events, person information, or court orders. With 22A, they will release a second phase to this functionality with some improved ease of use. This functionality allows administrators to see who made changes and when, and what the change was, as well as a before and after comparison. It will also track changes made by HDL or spreadsheets. Once this is enabled, it will track these changes behind the scenes, and administrators can access the results via an audit report. This is an important enhancement to address the issue of when or if certain benefits changes were made and who made them. Administrators will now have this additional tool to assist with employee benefit questions or issues and maintaining compliance with your benefit plans. So thank you.
Yeah, I know that's something we've been waiting for a long time, right, Beth?
Yes, it's been a gap for a while, and it's too bad it wasn't before open enrollment, but we'll be ready to go for this year's open enrollment for sure.
Yeah, that's exciting that they're finally getting that functionality. So thank you so much, Beth. Really appreciate that. That's great.
Thank you.
So I'm going to turn this over to Scott Muggleston. Scott's going to run through, some of the all-important payroll things that are coming down the pipeline. So Scott, I'm going to give it to you.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Crystal. Thanks, Beth, for those insights. I'm Scott Muggleston. I'm on the payroll side here with eVerge. I know with the latest updates with 22A, I believe there's about 12 total changes that will be coming down the pipeline for 22A for payroll. That includes for the global payroll as well as the US payroll. Three of the items which I'd like to kind of talk about today, one of them is the Calculate Quick Pay single task action. So those that are in payroll, they're very familiar with the quick pay task. There's usually a quick pay payment and a quick pay simplified task within the system. They've created a new enhancement within the application to be able to allow you to do a minor enablement or change, which will give you the functionality of combining those into one task. Which will be called the Calculate Quick Pay task. And within that, it automatically defaults to the simplified quick pay flow. But you do have the option to also switch that within that flow to include the payments as well as other options within there. But it's just a minor update that can be done real quick through your Manage Administrator profile options within the system. So it just kind of helps simplify things, kind of gets your tasks kind of looking a little bit better on the system. But if that's been enabled, then you will see that it'll show as a Calculate Quick Pay and instead of the Quick Pay payments and Quick Pay simplified. So moving on to the second one, we have the override, the employee retroactive pay start date on the retroactive event notification page. So in a prior release, Within payroll, they did have the option within the payroll configuration process task. You're able to go in and put a default into the system to be able to apply a date on your notification. So any retros that were being processed in the system would not go prior to that date. One concern with that is that the prior update, when they introduced that into the system, is it actually applied it to all employees into the system. This new update, new enhancement, where there's no steps needed to enable it. It will be just functionality within 22A. Will actually allow you to do it on a more detailed level as far as an actual employee. So it's you can actually drive that override within the employee event. So it doesn't have to be across the board for all your employees. So for if you get an employee that runs a retro, and for some reason it comes in with an old date, you're not wanting retros to apply. Say, for example, it comes in and it has a date, 5 pay periods in the past, but you only need it to retro back 1 pay period. You can go within that notification, that retro event notification, be able to do an override to set the amount of payroll periods you want to include in that retro. So it'll be a nice feature as far as kind of help you manage a little bit better the retros and be able to define exactly how many retros you want to go back for an employee on a certain situation. The last one here is make payroll mandatory and remove dependency on add payroll button. I know a lot of this is actually kind of more on the HR side as far as the process and procedures, but it affects payroll. I know in the past for a lot of clients run into issues where you get errors on employees because there's no payroll assigned to the employee. So there's now functionality and enhancement within the system that you can actually go in on the HR side through HCM and Design Studio and be able to modify it so that you can automatically have payroll records newly created for an assignment. So if an employee changes to a new assignment of sorts, they need new payroll for that, you can actually, the system will automatically apply that. It also allows you to go into the system and modify those boxes as far as making the payroll box mandatory when a new hire comes into the system. So when HR is adding the new hire and through their new hire process, it won't let them proceed unless there's an actual payroll assigned to that employee. You also have the ability to remove that as well. So you can, apply the retro or not the retro, sorry, apply the requirement to those fields for payroll. So to make sure that everybody has a payroll assigned to them so that when it gets rolls through down to the payroll side, there's no errors or issues on that. So appreciate the time. That's all I have.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Okay, so we're gonna jump into one more page that I think is really important. So what we've provided here are links to some resources that we think are going to be super helpful to you. Types of performance documents. It goes back to what Mo talked about earlier today. Same with HR admin tasks for performance, and then how performance documents work with performance and goals. We want to make sure that you have all the tools that you need to get through these cycles as they come up. And then also implementing workforce compensation. We think that's a really important document to go back and review. We understand performance cycles and comp cycles, typically come around once a year. And so, sometimes you forget things. And so we want to make sure that you're really prepared for it this year. And then we've also included links to Customer Connect. If you're not using it right now, we really suggest that is something that you go in and utilize. It's a great tool. It's a great community. There's a lot of information out there. So I would suggest if you're not already in Customer Connect, go get in there, register and look around. And there's lots of answers out there. And we think it's a wonderful tool. Also, we've included the 22A updates that are coming down the pipeline, and then the Oracle Learning Explorer. I do want to go back and talk about 22A just really quickly, just as a reminder, and I'm sure you've seen it, and if you haven't, 22A is going to be pushed down in May this year. Instead of it coming through right now like it typically would be, it would usually be coming down in February. Oracle has made the decision to push it in with 22B. That's going to be a lot of enhancements at one time. This kind of harkens back to when Oracle used to do their updates every 6 months. And so we want to make sure that everyone's prepared for that. So if you need time with us, we are happy to sit down and run through what's coming down the pipeline during that time frame. Let's make sure that we are looking at what may be impactful to you, what's going to have any kind of downstream And let's work together to make sure everyone's ready for that this year, because I think it's going to be a big patch. And so we want to make sure that you guys are fully prepared for that. So if you have any questions, concerns, or comments, please feel free to reach out to us. We want to set time with you so that you are ready to take on those changes. I know there was a couple questions in the Q&A section. I believe Manoj is answering those questions right now. If there are other questions, please, we're going to give you a few minutes to go ahead and put those in there. If you don't feel comfortable asking those questions here and you just want to talk to us individually, you can certainly reach out to us. I have included all of our emails and phone numbers in this deck, in addition to all of the links that are available here. And so please feel free to reach out to us. I've also included our eVerge Live link, so you can always go to our eVerge Live link also. Our next presentation, we're going to talk about 22B highlights as well. And then we're still kind of playing around with topics. If you've got ideas about things that you really feel strongly about wanting to learn about, or you'd like more information on, we are happy to dig in and to drill down and to spend some time with you and get you prepared for whatever that is. And so if you have ideas about that, please feel free to let us know. But our next webinar will be in May of 2022. We are really thankful to have you as our clients and our potential clients and as our Oracle partners. And we want to say thank you so much for your time today, and we will see you soon. Let me check and make sure there's any other questions. Okay, it looks like, yeah, it looks like we do. So it looks like Tracy Johnson, right, has said, do you know if once you override the retro information, does that override stay in place and you don't have to keep track of who had the override for future retros? I think that's a Scott question.
That is. Yep.
All right.
No, on the new functionality, it's per event notification. So if you go in on an event notification and add this override, it's only going to apply to that one notification for that one retro for that one employee. If you were using the prior functionality, you'd have to remove that once you processed it. That way it doesn't apply to all employees going forward. So the new functionality is more refined and you're able to do it just on that one employee for that one retro. Hopefully that answers your question.
Okay, and then I know there's two questions here from Angelique. So one, you guys would like to learn more about ODA? That's perfect. We're going to get you set up with Dawn Holmes. She is our ODA expert, and we can get you some time with Dawn, and she can certainly provide you more information. And I think we have a webinar of Dawn presenting ODA as well, and I think we can get that for you also. And then you're asking if we would recommend reviewing 22A updates now or waiting until 22B. So my suggestion would be is get yourself familiar with 22A now so that you kind of have a good understanding of what's coming down with that. And then I think we're going to get the 22B updates. I think we're probably going to get those around the end of March, early April. And so as soon as we get those, then we can dig into those. And so then we have a game plan and we're prepared for anything that we might need to assist you with. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. All right. Well, listen, like I said, thank you again for your time. We really appreciate it. It's been great. And we will see you all soon. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.